Welcome to Write to Publish, your go-to podcast for all things writing and publishing. I'm Karen Stanley, a 14 times published author and the founder of Mabel and Stanley Publishing. Join me as I share a multitude of tips and insights drawn from my own writing and publishing journey. We'll be hearing from some inspirational authors too, who will share their writing experiences and top tips for success. Each week, we'll learn about an aspect of writing, from composition to genre and from publishing to marketing. Listen in as we learn and chat about all things writing and publishing, and let's get you on the right path. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Write to Publish with me, Karen Stanley, writing mentor and owner of Mabel and Stanley Publishing. It's lovely to have you joining me again for the Write to Publish podcast. So, this week, we're going to talk about how to create a book launch strategy that actually sells. And this is a kind of a bone of contention for lots of authors. The fact is, publishing your book, putting it on whatever platform you choose to put it on, whether it be Amazon or Ingram or just selling it through your website, however you're going to sell your book once it's published, it's not going to sell without a marketing strategy. That's true for any business, really, isn't it? Let's face it. If your shop is open and nobody knows your shop is there, you're not going to sell anything. And unfortunately, lots of business owners and writers, I include you in this, we're passionate about our craft, we're passionate about what we do, but we're not necessarily so passionate about the sales and marketing. And the unfortunate hard truth is that if you don't market your book, you're not going to sell it. It's not enough just to publish and hope that the people will come. But there are lots of things that you can do to promote your book and therefore increase your sales. Now, the one thing I will say about this is it's not a one and done strategy. Marketing takes real dedication, it takes commitment, it takes work. It's a long game. It's not a kind of a short one and done type deal. You do have to stick with it. You have to be consistent. You have to be prepared to try different things, change things when things don't work, adapt, refine, change your strategy. So it's a difficult journey, let's face it, but you will get better at it the more you do it and the more you practice. But if you don't practice and you don't keep on, then you won't get better at it and you just won't sell your books. I've spoken to lots of writers who've said, I published my book and it's just not selling. And I'm like, well, what have you done to market it? And then when we delve deeper, it turns out that they've done very little at all. But again, as I just said, it's not a one and done. It takes commitment. So we're going to talk about a few things that you can do in order to promote your book. Now, social media, obvious solution. Love it or hate it, it's free, it's there, and lots of people use it. And those lots of people are potentially your readers. It's a good idea, though, to find out where your readers are hanging out. Now, if you've written a business book, then you're probably more likely to want to be promoting that on LinkedIn rather than Facebook and Instagram, because it does tend to be that your readers are going to be hanging out on LinkedIn rather than Facebook and Instagram. Not to say they're not there, but the one thing I would say is, particularly if you're not very experienced in social media, you haven't done it before, you haven't got a lot of time, or you're just starting out, master one platform well, and then do that, get a consistent strategy going, get a consistent sort of posting schedule going, and then go on to a different platform. Don't try and do all of the things all of the time, all at once, because you're just going to get overwhelmed. You're going to lose your way and you're probably going to lose heart. So think about your audience and where they're hanging out. If you've written, I don't know, young adult, then it might be that your audience is hanging out on TikTok. As I say, if you've got a business book, they're probably going to be hanging out on LinkedIn, and different audiences will use Facebook and Instagram. When you go onto the platforms, you can use your analytics and your insights to kind of gear your audience, look at what your audience demographics. There's lots of analytical tools that you can use to make sure that when you get data, when you start to get traction, when you start to get engagement, and that's key, you don't want to be just broadcasting out on these channels with no engagement, then you can start to refine it and look at who's engaging, who's interacting, and whether you're in the right place for your book. So choose one platform, do that well, run with it, keep it going for at least 90 days, I would say, before you even start to get any kind of traction or any kind of results. And then if you feel confident, then you can branch out to another platform. But Don't be posting all over TikTok if your audience aren't hanging out on TikTok, because it takes a long time to get your social media written and your content created, and it's a lot of work and a lot of effort. So you don't want to be putting your efforts into something that aren't going to get you the return on that investment. So just think about that carefully before you choose your platform. So when you're posting on social media, things that you could post will be things like behind the scenes, day in the life of an author, snippets from your book. When you're coming up to launch, your cover reveal, little top tips, maybe some character profiles, maybe running some free competitions. You could be sharing some testimonials for your writing if this is book 2, maybe if you've written more than one book. There's lots of things that you can post, but you need to come up with some sort of content strategy that will keep your audience engaged and interested. Once you've posted out onto those social channels, make sure you're engaging. So if you've got people commenting, go back and comment on their comments, reply to their comments. Without engagement, you're just a broadcaster, and that can be very stagnant and static, and it's not really going to get you that traction that you desire. So choose your platform, choose it wisely, get some great content going out there, be consistent, and then engage. Easy when you know how, eh? A long list of things to do. I do appreciate this is not for the faint of heart, which is why authors who are successful and do well have put a jolly lot of effort into it. So they usually very well deserved. You can run Amazon ads. They're a bit of a minefield, and I would recommend that you do some training or you do some research into how to run them. If you run them incorrectly, you can just end up chucking money down the drain. If you run them correctly, you can gauge your cost per click and what your return on investment is. They can be powerful, they can be useful, and they can be successful, but you do need to know what you're doing, and you do need to make sure that you've done your research and your homework before you start to invest in Amazon ads. Physical launch. A physical launch is a great way to launch your book. My caveat to that would be, don't spend too much money. You don't need a whizzy, busy bang of a book launch at some swanky hotel where the canapes are hundreds of pounds a tray. Choose your venue wisely. Choose a venue that perhaps is someone who you could collaborate with. One of my authors recently, she'd written a book on teaching baby to sleep. Her book is called. She's also a nanny. She had her book launch in a really swanky cot shop in a swanky part of London, in Chelsington and Kensington, around that area. It's great. She got the venue for free. The venue were delighted because it means it got people through their door and they could show off. And then obviously everyone's taking photographs and they're tagging that venue in on social media. So sometimes the venue's going to be only too pleased to support you. But obviously, this author, she chose the cot shop. She's written a book about babies and getting your baby to sleep, and it's for young mums and new mums and parents. So a cot shop makes sense. If you've written a book about a serial killer, for example, you're probably not going to choose a cot shop. So try and think about something that's relevant to your book. I'm going to another book launch in February. I do get invited to lots of wonderful parties, which is a perk of my job. She's written a work of historical fiction based in the Tower of London. She knows a guy who works in the Tower of London. So she's managed to get her celebration event there. So there's lots of ways that you can tap into your resources, tap into your network to find a great place to launch your book. Don't overspend. It's a little bit of a vanity project, if I'm honest, but it's great for promo. It's great for the socials. It's great for people to be talking about your book and building a buzz. So just really be careful about what you spend and spend your money wisely and choose your venue. I mean, my book, 1 year at the Dog and Duck, managed to find a pub called the Dog and Duck, if ever you would believe it. And we had a rather lovely launch there. So it works, and it can work really on a low budget and more successful than if you just chuck loads and loads of money at it without any thought. Author talks are always good, depending on what topic your book is on. So, for example, you might, thinking about my friend who's written the historical fiction, you might want to talk at a local history group's annual meeting or monthly meeting. If you've written a children's book, then of course you might be trying to get speaking gigs in schools, taking your book along and maybe running assemblies or workshops, sharing your author journey or what it's like to be an author, chatting to the children about that. So think about where you can get speaking opportunities for your book. And again, you're thinking about who's your audience. So if you've written a business book, then you might be looking to speak at business gigs and charity functions and women in business events and networking events. If you've written a children's book, then the ideal place for you to be speaking about your book would be in a school relevant to your age group. So if you've written a Key Stage 2 book, you'll be talking to Key Stage 2. Secondary books, you'll be trying to get into secondary schools, vice versa. Not really rocket science, but looking at places where you can go and speak and promote your book. And people love to meet the author, find out about your writing process. You can talk in libraries. Quite often they have special guests to talk about books. There's lots of different events. If you keep an eye out in the local press and again on social media for places where you can go and look and talk about your book, and people will be delighted to hear from you and speak to you, because it's usually of interest to particular sections of the community. Again, it needs to be relevant to your book. On a similar vein, look out for literary festivals in your area. Is there a place where you can tag along, or maybe have some kind of a stand at a literary festival? Or perhaps you can just rock up with your business cards as an author and do some networking and maybe share some copies of your book. But literary festivals are the obvious place to go and try and promote your book, talk about it, share it, network with other writers. Writing is quite a good supportive community, I would say, and lots of other writers will be prepared to support you in your journey, because it can be quite a lonely journey. Writers tend to stick together a little bit, really. So think about literary festivals where you might be able to share your author journey and network with other writers, and also that will raise your profile, particularly as a local author. You could also try approaching your local bookshop. Sometimes they love to have a local author in to come and talk about their book. I used to do puppet workshops in a bookshop locally to me in the children's section, because I'd written a couple of children's books, and the kids came in and made little finger puppets who were characters from my book. That created a real buzz. The kids loved it. The bookshop loved it because I was bringing people in through the door, and also they then promoted me on their newsletters and things like that. So that's a great way to get interest for your book and interest for you, particularly locally as an author. You do really also want to be growing your fan base, particularly through your email list if you can. Again, you can be posting out on social media. If you use an email software provider such as MailChimp, MailerLite, there's loads of them out there. Create yourself a bit of a lead magnet. Maybe it could be a free giveaway. Maybe it could be, I don't know, a little character profile of a character that didn't quite make the book and ended up on the cutting room floor, metaphorically speaking. You know, what you want to do is get people to sign up to your list. And then as you're writing, you could be sending them out a newsletter with updates to tell them what's been going on at Karen Stanley Writer or Joe Smith Writer. You could be giving them little progress reports on your story as you write it. But what you're wanting to do is you want to nurture that audience, grow that audience into a base of committed fans, people who are interested in you as the author. You know, people buy from people. They want to know, like, and trust you. They want to engage with you. They want to think about your style. Again, going back to my friend who's written historical romance, a huge part of the Tower is the ravens, and she always includes a little, fun fact about ravens on her newsletter, because she knows that her audience are very engaged and very interested in that, because they're interested in the Tower of London and they're interested in historical fiction and history in general. So think about, again, how you're going to grow your email list, and then you're going to be regularly emailing them out, maybe once a month, once a fortnight, sometimes even once a week, particularly if you're getting towards a launch, nurturing that audience, bringing them in via your sign-up form and getting them engaged and wanting to buy from you. This is brilliant as well. If you ever get to bringing out a second book, you've already got that group of engaged fans who are on board with what you've got to offer. So those are just a few ideas of how you can launch your book and the promotional tools that are open to you. You don't just have to go online. It may be appropriate for you to drop flyers. You could, I once went along to a book club and they had me as their chosen author, which meant everybody had to buy my book. And then they did a lovely buffet and we had a glass of wine and they chatted to me about my writing process and how I created my characters. And they were really interested and quite lovely, actually, talking about the book writing process, and very excited to meet the author of a book that they'd read. So those are other ways for you to get your book out there. The sad truth, or the exciting truth, is your book is not going to get out there without you getting it out there. That's the simple truth. So however you choose to do that, are going to have to do the donkey work, and you are going to have to put the hours in. My piece of advice really would be, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. So don't just wholly rely on social media. You might need a combination of an email list is always a good idea, because if ever you lose your social media platform, you lose your fans. So having their email addresses means that you will be able to contact them without social media once they're in your world. But you could also be putting flyers around, you could be putting posters up, you could be going along to events where you think it would be a good idea for you to see and be seen. Don't just rely wholly on social media or online presence. You need a physical presence as well. And people, as I say, people buy from people. So the more you can be out and about, seen, talking at venues, collaborating people, going on podcasts, getting interviews with other people. You could even have your own podcast interviewing other authors, and then you can be promoting each other. So there's lots and lots of ways in which you can do it, but the important thing really is to have a strategy. Think about what you want to achieve, and think about all of the ways in which you could achieve that, and then choose your 3 or 4 ways that you can really dedicate to, that are relevant to your book, relevant to your genre, and also relevant to your reader, and where your reader is hanging out. That's really important. There's no point marketing to an empty space, because you're wasting your time. Your efforts will not be rewarded. And really just pursue that strategy, and make sure you know what it is you want to achieve and how you're going to achieve it. And that way you can measure what works, what doesn't work, what you might need to tweak, what you might need to change, reassess, do more of, do less of. And then you will have much more success. But do not expect this to happen overnight. It's a long game, and it requires a whole lot of input and effort on your behalf. So I wish you well. If you've got any questions at all about marketing or launching your book, please do get in touch. Karen at MabelandStanleyPublishing.com. And I'm always happy to answer your questions. You can find me on all the social media channels, Mabel and Stanley Publishing, at Mabel and Stanley Publishing. And as I say, I tried to be the person I needed when I started out. So if you've got any questions about launching, about marketing, or anything writing and publishing, please do get in contact. And I'd love to be able to help and be part of your journey. I always feel very honoured to be part of my writer's journey. It's a real privilege and an honour for me. So I wish you well. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you or hear from you all again soon. Take care, and let's get you on the right path.